Welcome back to another episode of Talk Dead to Me. I'm your host, Johnny Odell. I'm the social media manager for The Walking Dead, and this week we wrap up the exciting, the elongated, the amazing Walking Dead Season 10. The bonus episodes are kaput. We ended on a bang with Here's Negan, arguably, in my opinion, a top 10 episode of The Walking Dead, if not top 5. Now, if you don't like Negan, and you never will, then you may not like this episode, but for everyone else, this is the episode for you. You know, even the people who are on the fence, I think, can get something great out of this episode, and I'm so happy we ended it this way. Along with that, we also got the exciting news that The Walking Dead Season 11, which will be its final season, will premiere on Sunday, August 22nd. That is big news. I know they said this summer. I was kind of thinking maybe June or July, but August, end of August, that's okay. It's a little earlier than normal. It's usually in October. So I'm just happy we are going to get that season, hopefully on time. I'm sure it will be. Pandemic is coming to a close, folks. Knock on wood. This week, my guest is the amazing Ross Marquand. He's actually one of the longest serving cast members at this point, and we talk about that a little bit. We also talk about his impressions. If you guys don't know, he's a fantastic impressionist. I did not ask him to do any impressions, but boy, he did a few just to make us feel a little bit better in these dark times. Anyway, Ross Marquand is on. Very excited for you guys to hear it. Next week, I am not sure who our guest is going to be, but Fear the Walking Dead will be back. And boy, oh boy, I really wish people hadn't gotten the episode a week early. Thanks, AMC Plus. They're not paying me, so I can kind of dunk on them a little bit. But, you know, that's show business, baby. Anyway, we will continue having guests. We will continue this podcast, and I'm excited for you guys to see what we make of it. I say we, it's really me. I mean, I got no one helping me on this thing. It's just me, and that's how I like it. So anyway, enough talking from me, guys. Let's get right into the podcast. This is Ross Marquand. So you grew up in Colorado, right?
Yep.
What was your upbringing like?
I grew up the youngest of three boys. We were, very middle class, kind of, typical church going Christian family in small town America. The town that I'm from is literally called Littleton. And it used to be Little Town, but they were like, well, that sounds pretty dorky and too on the nose. So let's shorten it to Littleton. And I was like, oh my God, whoever named this town. So wholesome, but so painfully uncreative,
Right.
We grew up in a very small town, and I think like a lot of small town kids, you have aspirations of going somewhere else, and your creativity runs wild, and that's largely where I kind of started to entertain the idea of becoming an actor, or at least a comedian of sorts. I just like a lot of latchkey kids, my parents just put us in front of a TV. That was our babysitter, and I learned so much from, early TV like Addams Family, Bewitched. I watched a ton of I Dream of Jeannie. You name it from the classic era of TV, like I've seen it all. And, I met John Astin, who played Gomez Addams, at the airport, the old Denver airport, Stapleton, like 92 when I was 10 or 11. And he was the nicest guy on the planet. And I just remember like, he was really encouraging. And he said, if you want to be an actor, you should go for it. And it was the first time I'd ever really thought maybe I could be, because, you're from Colorado, you're like, I'm never going to make it to LA. It's never actually going to happen. But he was very encouraging, and many years later it worked out. So.
Wasn't one of your first impressions Johnny Carson?
It was my first impression, yeah.
That was your first impression? Wow. So your parents were probably huge fans, as everyone's parents were.
I hope I'm not throwing them under the bus when I say this, but money was tight in the 80s, into the 90s too. I mean, my dad sold homes, and some months would be really good and some months would be so terrifyingly bad that we'd be in the hole. And, there was a lot of tenseness around the house, to say the least. And I noticed that the only person that made my parents laugh and get out of their mind and get out of their head for a little bit with all their financial woes was Johnny Carson. And so as a kid, I was like, oh, if I'm like that guy, I can cheer up my family, and then there won't be such a negative energy around the house. So it was really, a lot of like self-preservation thrown in there too, and just trying to like increase the overall mood of the family unit. So that's ironically where a lot of my impression and comedic chops came from, was just trying to make everyone else happy, which is probably not a great motivation. That's like sets up a lot of people ways
that's
later
beautiful.
in life.
So is this you like in front of a mirror, like practicing Carson?
I never really did it in front of the mirror. I was never, and a lot of impressionists who do that, but like I never really sat in front of the mirror for hours on end. I would mostly just be sitting in my room talking to myself, which, 20 some odd years later, I'm still doing, like it's kind of, I'm not sure much has changed. Like I'm home alone all the time. So I do talk to myself a lot, and usually they come out as different voices,
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So were you also in the Eagle Scouts or the Boy Scouts, but you became an Eagle Scout?
I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that seems pretty rife with impressions.
Yeah. I mean, like my dad was an Eagle Scout. His twin brother was an Eagle Scout. His younger brother was an Eagle Scout. And then my two older brothers were Eagle Scouts. So like, it was just, there wasn't even a question like whether you wanted to or not. You were just going to do it,
Yeah.
And that was kind of a thing that was an expectation for our family.
Gotcha. So you eventually make it to University of Colorado, and you got your BFA in theater. I read that you did To Kill a Mockingbird. Who did you play? Were you Atticus?
I was Atticus. Yeah.
Yes,
that was a lot.
I can totally see that.
It was cool. I mean, I feel like Aaron is largely informed, at least how I play him. I do borrow a lot from Atticus because, both kind of Southern gentlemen who, are forced to raise kids by themselves. Atticus, of course, I think they lost their mom, or maybe she did leave. I can't remember, but
I can't remember.
I don't know. I can't remember exactly why the mom was not present, but Atticus was raising these two children by himself. And then, of course, Aaron's raising Gracie by himself. And I think the way he talks about the world and tries to explain the world to these children, and people forget, like, To Kill a Mockingbird is literally told through the eyes of Scout,
Right.
She is the one who is recounting all this story about her father and what all happened there. And I think I always loved that perspective because, for a kid growing up in the apocalypse, what a terrible time. But, for them, it's just business as usual. They don't know any different. And I think you juxtapose that with 1940s or 1950s South with the horrible racism happening there, the horrors and the reality of the African-American plight. I mean, like, there's a lot of similarities there. So I did beg, borrow, and steal from Atticus quite a bit in trying to like explain the horrors of the world to a young child,
So you're saying we'll probably see Gracie in a ham costume next season, in season 11?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about the ham costume. Yeah.
Negan is the Boo Radley, I guess.
Oh, Negan would be a good Boo Radley. Yeah.
I'm just saying this needs to happen.
Actually, no. I think Boo Radley is actually Eugene. Eugene would make a great Boo Radley. Yeah.
Like, what is with that guy?
Yeah, he's just always kind of lurking around and like, ends up being a good dude, but you're like, I don't know about that dude.
Yeah, he saw him with a lot of radio equipment the other day. What is he using that for?
Exactly.
So, you grew up in a small town, University of Colorado. Was that a lot different for you? Was that something where you could kind of spread your wings a little bit, just even as a person?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, in all the ways. I mean, it was at that time the #1 party school in the country, which we're very proud of. So for going from like a really conservative, very Christian, upbringing to then being at a school that's full of hippies and all that comes with that, I definitely spread my wings quite a bit there, and I loved it. I mean, it was a great injection of new ideas and new philosophies that I'd never considered growing up. And I think that from those people I met and those experiences, they really helped me feel comfortable being more open about what my dreams were and what I wanted to do with my life. Because, for years, I thought I just had to be a businessman and I was going to, stay in Colorado for the rest of my life. And it was those 4 years that really helped me like actualize those dreams and say, oh, I can do kind of whatever I want. I just have to really go for it and attack those dreams with more intention,
Right. So do you move to LA right after you graduate, or is there some time in between?
I tried to, but I didn't have enough money.
Okay. Yeah.
I was lucky in that I got a scholarship for most of college, so I was able to graduate not debt free, but pretty much debt free,
Hmm.
um, and that was great. But I did realize that like you need a big cushion, as you know, living in LA to be out there. If you want to give yourself a real chance, you really have to have several thousands of dollars saved up. And I set the goal of like I think I set my goal of like 18,000. If I could have 18,000 in the bank,
Wow.
then move out there, I'd be good. So for the next year, and this just tells you like what the minimum wage was like. I mean, I was doing 3 odd jobs at the same time, working 80 hours a week, and living with my folks and just trying to save up that money. And I got the goal and then some, and then I moved out to LA, and I think I blew through that money in the first 6 months. I mean, it just
Jeez.
siphons everything away so quick.
Yeah.
It's so expensive living there, of course.
Yeah.
And then some real harsh realities popped in, and I had to do more odd jobs, and I was doing medical studies to pay the bills. I was doing cater waitering at various places. I was doing every odd job under the sun up until really I got on the show
Oh my
7 years
gosh.
ago. Yeah.
Hater, I'd love to see you in like Party Down. That would be like a
That
fantastic.
that is one of my favorite shows because it gets it so perfectly. I'm like, that is exactly what cater waitering is like.
That's good to know that they kept it accurate. So, coming
Yeah.
from such a sort of conservative traditional background, what were your parents thinking about all this? Most parents in that situation are pretty hesitant and scared, just out of love, of course. But
Totally.
yeah. How do they
Yeah.
feel?
I mean, and I say I'm glad you said that. I mean, I know it came out of love, but they were very scared, of course. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to hear that their son or daughter wants to get into the arts. Like that is the
Yeah.
most terrifying place to be successful in any way, shape, or form for any amount of consistent time. I mean, I know that they just thought the safest bet for me was staying in business and marketing, which is what I got my degree in initially.
Hmm.
And I just didn't see that for me. And during those months and those years, those very thin years where I was literally, you know, quite skinny and skin and bones because I budgeted between $12 to $14 a week for my groceries. So I was going to the 99-cent store across the pond in MacArthur Park every
Wow.
week with 12 or 14 literal dollars, and I wouldn't give myself any more. A lot of ramen, a lot of really like after date produce that they would sell for even cheaper. And you can make it work. It
Hmm.
just, you had to really stretch that. And,
Right.
I think that they were as supportive as they could be, knowing that their son was halfway across the country doing something wildly volatile and something that very few people ever have a chance of ever succeeding in. And I know that I am extraordinarily lucky and fortunate to be able to say that I stuck it out for 10 years and I finally got my break. But it's not the story for a lot of people, and I'm very
Yeah.
aware of that.
Obviously, a lot of people knew you right before Walking Dead with House of Thrones. What other things did you do before that that sort of led up to that?
Well, so I was kind of on the early bandwagon of all the YouTube videos and YouTubers in the early days of YouTube back in
Yeah.
2006, back in '06. And I teamed up a lot with my friend Josh and Lisa Nova, and we were doing a ton of, it was kind of the Wild West back then. No one knew if YouTube was even going to be a thing, if it was
Right.
going to take off, or the idea of monetizing was never even introduced until like 2009 or 2010.
Hmm.
So you would make these videos with the hopes of getting views, but then like what then? Like what's the point of getting views if you never got any money or anything out of it? So I sort of pivoted out of that into being like, well, I can't keep doing YouTube videos for free. I enjoy them, but I have to really focus on making money so I can pay rent. And I would be like kind of a hired gun whenever they needed me to do impressions. I would do stuff, but for the most part, I just kind of let go of a lot of my dreams for those first few years, and would do impression videos here and there for people if they asked me to. But for the most part, I was just kind of writing scripts and going to seminars and just filling my head with as much knowledge as possible on how to be a successful actor. um, and it didn't pan out obviously for many years. Like you can put so much time and energy into something and it can still not work out. But I think it's important that you at least try to do that. And that's what I was doing in those early years, was just trying to fill my head with as much knowledge as possible so that I could hopefully apply it in the real world.
I miss the good old days of those early 2000s, mid 2000s YouTube. It was the college humor, Funny or Die, and then, you know, the Derek comedies of the world, who were just blowing up. Yeah, I can't believe they didn't monetize
some
back
weird
then.
stuff back then. Yeah, I mean, there was some daring stuff happening back then. Like I was involved in some stuff that I'm like, looking back, I'm like, this was so bizarre and weird, and I just don't think that the general populace would get it now, because it was just more like almost Tim and Eric style comedy, where we're just like, what the hell is going on here, you know?
Talking about impressions, I have a roommate who's really, really solid at them. You're like sort of the Jordan of impressions, you and like Jay Farrow. But my roommate's really solid at it. He has, you know, a dozen impressions he's great at, but he kind of hates when people ask him to do them. And I've watched a number of interviews where like, you're like seriously talking about your career. And then they're like, all right, come on, do your McConaughey. And I'm just wondering, are you like dying inside, or do you love doing them? Cause he likes doing them, but like, he doesn't like being put on the spot. Like he's like some entertaining monkey or something. You know?
I kind of feel the same way. I think, like, especially when you're, I remember I was doing this really serious interview in London a few years ago, and it was like talking about how, you know, Glenn and Abraham had just died, and, you know, talking about how serious that was, and the process of that, and like how we were all crying take after take. And it was just a really somber mood on set for those 2 weeks that we were shooting. And then the interviewer was like, yeah, right, great. So this must be really difficult for you. So any chance we could hear your Christian Bale? And I'm like, what? Like, I just told you how heart-wrenching it was to see two of my friends die off on the show, and you're like, right, great. Yeah, so can you make us laugh? That would be great if you could. That would be lovely. Dude. Yeah, so
that's amazing.
I like it when it comes naturally. I think if it comes up very naturally in the conversation, and there's like a logical inroad for it, like in all conversation, I like when it feels natural and genuine. If it feels forced in any way, I'm a little bit hesitant, of course. So
yeah, but you kind of feel like you have to do it, right? Because people. Yeah. That's.
I mean, I will say I credit those impressions for helping me get the job, because Scott Gimple was apparently a fan of my impressions and saw some of my comedy stuff. So I will say, I mean, I definitely think some of these impression videos helped me get jobs, but I don't want to be just known for that, you know?
Absolutely. No, I don't think you should be. I mean, you're an excellent actor.
But
I do want to just ask, like, what do you see in common with you
and other...
Said, Let's hear an impression. Let me hear it. No, I am not going to ask you to do any of that this interview. Do not worry. I'm just curious, like, what you see in common with other impressionists. Like, there has to be, not everyone can do it, obviously. Like, what is it? Do you have to have a certain tone in your voice? Is it just like a gift, like being good at basketball? Like, how do you sort of define it?
I think the best impressionists that I know are all the one thing in common is that they're all empathic. They're very empathic and are able to put themselves in other people's shoes, you know, because anyone can do like a kind of a cartoony impression, like Schwarzenegger and Walken are ones that people do all the time. But they're like, "Hi, what are you doing?" You know, but there's no pathos there. There's no sinking into the character, into the person behind the voice. If you do, like, for instance, like McConaughey, you can't just do McConaughey as like, you know, a stoner guy. You got to like think about what it's like to be McConaughey and how he sees the world. And I think the people that I admire the most are the ones that really sink into the character and see the world through their eyes. And then the voice is informed because of that. Right. That's what I see more than anything. It's just the empathy, or the ability to see the world through their eyes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Everyone did Trump. It was like this generation Shatner pretty much. So did you have a favorite Trump impression? Because there was, you know, thousands to choose from, but the ones I really kind of gravitated to are the ones that really got his inflection right. And, you know, some people are just so bombastic about it. Like, were there any that really stood out to you?
So here's the thing. I've done Trump for a long time, and I had never done it publicly. I'm glad you asked that, because I think everyone was doing this great big Trump, but actually most of the time he was a very subtle speaker. and he loved to elongate words and then make his mouth very small. Okay, and I love that. I love the up and down of his voice.
Like, I'm fascinated by his voice. I think he's one of the most interesting orators of our time. Politics notwithstanding.
Hilarious, but it's true.
Yeah, I mean, he does have a charisma, which I think is why he won over so many people. And there is something very bizarrely interesting about his voice, because it is so frenetic and all over the place, but and he'll have a thought midstream that'll make it go up. He'll be like,
so here's the deal. And I also said that, but by the way, and then, well, this would never happen to me, okay? And
you're like, whoa, it's like a roller coaster. With like Obama, it was very calm. It was very measured. You'd get this sort of, I'm talking to you right now. And this is, yep. It was always very one note, which was also its own brand of pleasing and interesting. But Trump was just a roller coaster every time he opened his mouth,
That's
in more
fantastic.
ways than one.
I want everyone to know I did not ask him to do the impression, but I'm glad you did
Nope.
it. That was cool.
Nope.
Did you consider, because I know you had experience with obviously sketch comedy, improv. Did you consider auditioning for SNL?
I did audition for SNL.
You did audition.
Thanks for bringing
SNL.
it up, Johnny. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
My God.
No, it's very funny. I auditioned for that, and I auditioned in front of Lorne too, Lorne Michaels, and it's a strange setting because like they tell you like no one's gonna laugh, least of all Lorne, so don't expect to laugh. Like they train he and his staff to like not laugh at you, so don't take it personally. I'm like, that's terrible. What comedy is all about, give and take, and like going with the energy of a crowd. So I was really always confused by that. But I suppose it separates you from those who like would break under pressure, and get freaked out if you don't get the immediate response you want. But I auditioned for that 6 months or so before I got the audition for The Walking Dead, which is really funny because I gave up acting right before I auditioned for the Walking Dead. I've said on a few other podcasts and whatnot, like after that SNL failed audition, I was like, this isn't going to happen for me. And I had $115,000 worth of debt roughly. And, credit card debt and just living in LA for 10 years. I was like, oh, I'm being dumb now. Like this is now setting myself up for a lifetime of just paying off debt for the rest of my life. And that's just stupid. So I was ready to tuck my tail between my legs and give up. And then a month after making that decision, I got the audition for The Walking Dead, which is so weird. And, life is just so funny. I have no idea what to make of any of that. But that's what,
I'm such a huge SNL fan. I'm so bummed that I now know that. Because there were the Jim Carreys of the world who auditioned and didn't get it. So there's always the ones that get away. But God, and the fact that now I almost feel bad for the cast. It's like, oh, we need like a Biden. Instead of just like using one of their guys, they're like, let's get Jim Carrey to do it. Like, let's get, we need a Kavanaugh. Is Matt Damon available?
I like that they outsource a little bit. I think Alec Baldwin's Trump wasn't the most accurate, but it was fun to watch. I know so many other guys who do a more accurate, more spot on Trump, but his Trump was just entertaining. And I think SNL has always prided itself on finding impressionists who are entertaining first and accurate second. That's why, I think the best impressionist who's ever been on that show arguably is Jay Farrow. Phil Hartman was incredible too, but in terms of accuracy, in terms of like, he does these people so well that you cannot tell the difference between him and the real person. Jay Farrow steals the cake, but they rarely ever gave him a chance to do his thing. Like, I feel like he was always, kind of pushed to the background and doing like, smaller bit characters when his real strength was spot on, incredible jaw-dropping impressions. And I was like, why don't you put Jay in more sketches? Like, he needs to be your guy. He's your resident impressionist and arguably the best impressionist SNL's ever had. Why don't you push more for him? Luckily, my friend Melissa Villasenor is on there now, and she's also incredibly accurate and entertaining. But she also happens to do a bunch of character work. But I would love to see more of the true blue impressionists on that show be allowed to do their thing and like really show what they're capable of, because I just don't think that's what the show really pushes. It's more about like broad character work, impression work. I mean, improv work rather than let's do the best like impression here.
Yeah, they'd make Jay Farrow be the principal in the last sketch of the night or something. Or they'd have him be the one time they'll like let him be Denzel at a department store, and you're like, all right.
Yeah. I mean, he should be playing Will Smith every week. I mean, his Will Smith is just, it cracks me up to the point of tears. I mean, it's just so good. And I mean, all of his impressions are just mind-blowingly good. So I don't know. I hope that they actually let him do more.
Do you have a base level respect for impressionists? Or there's some where like people are laughing hysterically and you're like, that's not that good. I can do that way better.
Yeah, I mean, I think every impressionist, because especially if I know an impressionist who does it better, and people are like, oh, he's the best, Christopher Walken impressionist. I'm like, he's not. I mean, I'm sorry, but like my friend so-and-so or my friend so-and-so does it way better. Like I feel like most people who do impressions all the time, there's like a genuine camaraderie and like respect, because like my friend Piat does Jeff Goldblum better than I think Jeff Goldblum does. I mean, it's incredible. And I've tried to do my own Jeff Goldblum, and it's like, it's okay, but his is like, it's the best. And Josh Robert Thompson does the best George Lucas, and like I can do an approximation, but if you got people who already do it perfectly, I always tell them like, I can try, but whenever I'm called up for a voiceover job and whatever, and there is a real respect amongst most impressionists where like, if you get called up for a job and that someone does it better, a lot of times you'll be like, you know what, I can do it, but like call him because he's the guy, or call her because she does it perfectly, and I appreciate that a lot, because like there's a genuine, like it's a small community and we got to like kind of stick together,
Yeah. After the SNL audition, you had kind of sort of given up, but then you said you had an audition a few months later. So were you like, all right, I'm just going to tough it out for the rest of the year or something, and then just see if anything comes?
Well, no, I mean, I got that audition, and that was, I think, the third time I'd auditioned for the show.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, it didn't work out the first two times. At one time, I'm fairly confident was for Gareth, the cannibal leader. And once I figured that out, I was like, oh crap, I was so bummed. But then I was relieved because Aaron, of course, lives longer than Gareth, but Andrew West did such a good, like an incredible job as Gareth. Like I really wanted that character to last longer, only because, I mean, you hate Gareth, the character, but what Andrew West did with him was so beautiful and so genuinely like awe-inspiring. The acting in that is just phenomenal. And for anybody to stand toe-to-toe with Rick or Andy Lincoln and be that domineering is a huge feat. I mean, it's a huge feat to take up screen with Andy Lincoln and be like, this guy is imposing to Rick. I mean, I love what he did with that character. So I'm glad that he got it. So
yeah,
and that I did.
And that you got your character too. So what was the audition process like for Walking Dead?
Normally for a show, a character that could like recurring, that will maybe turn into a series regular, you have to do the initial audition, then you go to producers, then you go to network. This one was super weird in that it was a one and done. I mean, it was just on tape. It was a week before my birthday. It was so August 15th was the initial. It was a Friday. I remember back in 2014, which is crazy to admit. But I auditioned one time, and then the casting director was like, I've seen some of your comedy stuff, and like I feel like there's a lot of comedy in this character. Can you just try it with a little bit more of like this kind of zhuzh? And I was like, all right, I'll give it a whirl. And that was it. And it was all on camera. I think we did it 2, maybe 3 times, and that was it. And then a week later, I hadn't heard anything. And usually, if you don't hear in the first few days, you didn't get it. But on my birthday, August 22nd, I was sick with a stomach flu. just like spending probably what was going to be one of the worst birthdays of my life in bed, sick as a dog with a terrible fever. And then my manager called at like 5 o'clock that afternoon and said, are you sitting down? I'm like, I'm lying down. What's going on? And she's like, well, your life's about to change. You just got The Walking Dead. And I shot out of bed and instantly felt better. It was really wild. And then a week after that, I was in Georgia filming the show, and I filmed it through the end of 2014.
Wow.
So, yeah,
that's wild.
Really,
I mean,
really weird.
And
I thought they were going to kill me off for sure. Like in that first season, I was like, they're going to kill me off. Like I just kept waiting and waiting for them to kill me. And then they didn't. And then the next year I was like, they're going to kill me. I just know they're going to kill me. And then they didn't. And I'm still just waiting for them to kill me off, because I feel like that's the show we work on. Everyone's just like, oh, is this the episode that I die?
You're like one of the last remaining veterans, like, you, Norman, Melissa, I guess you can now put Jeffrey in that, but it's in Maggie, obviously, but Lauren, but Wild. Did they tell you? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just looking at the cast list the other day, but the remaining cast, it's like Norman, Melissa, Lauren, as you said, Beth, Christian, Josh, and myself. And it's like, how the hell did 7 years go by so fast? Like, it's just weird, really weird. Yeah.
During the pandemic, I finally watched The Wire, and I'm so sorry it took so long, but I was like, all right, this is something I finally have the time to do it. And seeing Seth in that role was so jarring for me, because it's so dramatically different from Father Gabriel. Yep. And it's wild. I was like, man, the acting range on this guy, because he's so like casual and kind of aggressive, but hilarious. And like, then he's like so reserved, or now a killer. It's crazy. The acting chops.
It's my favorite. I've loved his work for a long time. I saw him in Starship Troopers first, but like that his role in The Wire is like, I mean, everybody, Chad Coleman, Lawrence, obviously Idris Elba, like everybody in that is just kind of perfect. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael B. Jordan's just casually in it in the beginning. It's like a 13-year-old. You're just like, what is the show? It's insane. Lance Reddick. You're just like,
forgot about that.
Yeah.
Whoa. Totally.
Michael B. Jordan. Yeah. He got killed, which was really sad. And like, I don't know if it was season 1 or season 2. I think season 2, maybe.
Yes.
Really sad. But yeah, Jesus Christ. It's just like a murderer's row of actors. Anyway, sorry. We're not here to talk about The Wire. But
right.
I've just been in a pandemimic, and I was like, I watched it. Can I talk about it with anyone?
Real quick on that, Scott Gimple wanted to bring on a lot of The Wire was one of his favorite shows, and he's very open about. He's like, I was a huge fan of The Wire, and I just wanted to get as many Wire actors as I could, and he did. He got. That's
a good strategy.
Damn good strategy. Yeah.
I think Robert had seen Chad in it. Maybe it was Scott. I'd heard it was Robert who saw Chad in it and was like, that's Tyrese. That is.
Oh, cool.
That is 100% Tyrese. We have to get him.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right. So your character obviously has evolved like crazy. You're kind of like the awkward map recruiter guy in season 5. And all the way now we have a full beard. You've kind of transformed into the comic version of Rick Grimes. I don't know if that's on purpose or not. I mean, you don't have an arm, you have the beard. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know. Without Andy, you're kind of Rick now. It's weird. I've decided you're Rick.
Thank you. I don't think there's any way that we could, like people have made that comparison, and I'm like, there is no replacing Rick. I think that
no. I know.
I feel like the beard thing had been something that I had pushed for years with Angela, and I just said, please let me have a beard, because I love my beard. I miss my beard. I had a beard for many years before I got on the show, and I'm kind of lazy when it comes to my facial hair. I just want to like let it go, freak out. And in the comics, at a certain point, Aaron gets a beard as well, and I just said, I think we're at that place, right? We're at that place where we're kind of in the same, timeline with the comics. And she's like, all right, you can have your beard. And then I just let it go. And then, of course, like season 9 was arguably too much. Like, I remember there was times where I would be like waking up in the morning and thinking that I had like an animal, underneath my chin or something, like there was something attacking me. I was like, what the hell is going on? I mean, it got bad, the last 2 seasons, I've definitely streamlined it a little bit more and made it more manageable.
Looks good, man. It's a solid beard.
Thank you.
Solid beard. What's it like? Like every season, you kind of have a new cast of characters. You almost are on like a dramatic version of SNL, where there's just different kind of eras of actors and characters that come and go. What is that like? Is that kind of jarring?
It is jarring. I mean, we've had so many wonderful actors come and go, and of course, there's friendships that come with that. And whenever someone leaves, it's devastating. I mean, you never want to leave behind some of these people because you know that you may not see them again. You try to keep in touch, text, social media, but by the time someone's done, they're auditioning for the next thing, and they might be on another show for years, shooting in Toronto or Vancouver. And especially with COVID, it makes it so much harder to stay in touch with folks. So when we lose people on the show, it's very sad. It's very, very sad. But I will say this iteration of the cast is one of my favorites. We've got more diversity than ever. We've got some of the most wonderful and kind and good workers, and just show up and are excited to be here. And I think whenever there's new actors on the show who haven't been on as long as some people have, they infuse new life into it, new enthusiasm, and that always makes it more fun to work with everybody.
Yeah. I agree. Magnus Group, I love the time jump. So we could get Judith to someone who can talk and interact with people instead of just kind of stare around and stuff. She was great. I also love that, we would lose a major character every few months or so. And then I love how there's a 7-year time jump where I'm losing my voice, where there's just no incidents at all. It's fine.
Yeah. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. There were a lot of I suppose there's things that happen that we don't hear about, but in terms of big stuff, there's no mention of a terrible war with another tribe. It's no, it just was pretty good. And here we go again,
Do you get a heads up? I was talking to Jim Barnes, and he was kind of telling me about how Angela sees sort of these tent poles or orange cones from the comics. All right, at some point, Negan will have to kill Glenn. At some point, there will be heads on spikes. Do you get to the beginning of a season, say season 9, where you're all right, this is probably going to be the heads on spike season, right? Do they give you a heads up, or are you just kind of episode by episode is all the information you're given? How much do you know?
I know very little. And that's, I think they're I used to think that other people knew more than I did, and I was, frustrated. And then I realized, no, everyone's kind of in the dark. So, and I think that's by design because they want to make the material fresh for us. I think everyone in the cast knew that we were going to be heading into the Commonwealth territory just because it's so iconically teased in that final episode of last season with the stormtrooper outfits and everything. But, aside from that, there's very few lines of demarcation that tell you here's where we're going with the story. It's usually pops up as it pops up.
Yeah, no, I'm excited because a lot of the Commonwealth story arc is based around Michonne finding her daughter, Rick, finding a new leadership role, making an alliance with Pamela. And without Rick and Michonne, I'm how the hell is the season going to play out? I have no idea. So let's go to the bonus episodes. You're in one more, which was excellent, by the way. You, Seth, and then the Terminator himself, Robert Patrick, T-1000. What was that like working with Robert Patrick?
Well, Robert, first of all, is one of my new favorite people on the planet. I was so nervous about working with him because, sometimes you see an actor play only one type of role, and he mostly plays psychotic badasses. Yeah. And, sometimes their personal character doesn't stray far from the characters they play, but that is the opposite with Robert. I couldn't have asked for a more pleasant, kind, funny, affable, genuinely interested in getting to know everybody. He was one of the nicest and funniest and kindest men I've worked with on this show or any other show. And I'm very, very sad. I was texting him the other day. I was we're just bummed that we had to kill you off so soon, because I think that Maze would have been such a fascinating character to have on the show for this last season,
Yeah, I would have loved to have this sort of old jaded guy just kind of join the cast randomly. I interviewed him for this podcast. He's a really interesting guy. And it was fun to hear him just talk about some stories. Did you know that Billy Idol was originally supposed to be the T-1000 and T2?
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
And he got sick or something, or broke his foot. Something happened.
He got in a motorcycle accident, and then
that's what it was.
Yeah, and they're like, all right, well, let's just get an unknown. And I was like, Billy Idol couldn't have played that role anyway. I mean, he would have been too famous. It would have been ridiculous.
Yeah,
like that's Billy Idol.
I know. I mean, Robert told us that on set, and we're like, Billy Idol? Like, why? You know, I think Sting is one of those musicians that everyone knows is like a great musician, but could be also an amazing actor. Like, he was great in Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels. He was great in Dune. You know, and maybe Billy Idol would have been just as good if we had given him a shot. But I mean, once you see how beautifully Robert played the T-1000 with just like, you know, not being able to emote very much, not being able to do too much, but still conveying so much, like a liquid metal computer that's just intent on one thing and one thing only, just killing, is like, he did that role so well. And I can't imagine anyone else playing that. But you know that Lance Henriksen was supposed to play the Terminator in the original Terminator, right?
Really? No, I didn't know that.
Schwarzenegger was not supposed to be the original Terminator.
Oh my God. There should be just a what if series for that. That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, and Schwarzenegger was, I think he was coming off of like just a few years earlier winning Mr. Universe pageant. And of course he also was just in Conan. And I think James Cameron was like, oh, what if the Terminator was just like this jacked, muscle bound, as opposed to Lance, who is extremely commanding and, you know, has his own, like, he can play that really well too, but just doesn't have the same physically imposing stature that Schwarzenegger does. But Lance Henriksen has a bit role in The Police Station. If you watch it.
Okay, I'll have to rewatch that. Robert actually has one of my favorite cameos in Wayne's World, which is probably my favorite part of the movie. Yeah. So good. So for one more, obviously, you know, you have had to do scenes like that before, where it's, you know, extremely high stakes, highly, you know, distressful. I also like the dramatic timing of the gun. That was pretty cool to like, all right, we're going to have you do it and you do it and you do it. It was like really great timing by the gun. But I'm curious, like, how do you just mentally prepare yourself for something that's going to be that sort of overwrought, something that's that emotional?
I mean, to be honest, we tried to keep it pretty loose because we knew it was going to be very, very dark in there. And I think, you know, sometime in the past, you know, I've tried very hard to stay in this dark mindset forever. Like when we were doing the episode with The Clearing where Abraham and Glenn get killed, I stayed in this very dark place for like a week and a half straight, both those episodes. Man. And it took a toll on all of us mentally and emotionally. We didn't sleep for most of that time. And it was just awful. Like it was just a terrible place to live in. And then I tried other times where you'd be playing dark scenes and with a lot of same emotionality with a little bit more lightness. And what I found was I was able to go to more places and more interesting choices when I wasn't so mired by the work all the time, when I was just a little bit looser. It's kind of like working out, you know, like if you're trying to get gains, you don't just work out all the time and expect that to work. You got to like relax and, you know, kind of do some stretches, do some yoga, whatever. And then your muscles have time to heal. And then you get more gains, you know, not to make a workout analogy for some reason.
No, let me make some notes here. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but like that's what we did for it. And I think it was the right choice, you know, because it was more honest and it was just more like on the fly choices. We were volleying back and forth, all three of us. And it was a lot of fun. It felt like theater again.
Yeah, it was pretty theatrical. But it was really great. You know, how did you sort of, when you first heard that they were going to do the bonus episodes, like how was it pitched to you? Like, were they like, because obviously not all the cast were involved in them. So was it like anyone who's comfortable with coming, or we just have these stories? Like, how did it sort of come to you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if there was a committee to see like who was comfortable with it. It was more just like, you know, we're doing these, we'd like for you to be a part of it. Are you interested? And I certainly was, because I'm always happiest when I'm working, and I was going nuts being alone during the pandemic, like a lot of people were. And, you know, they were like letting us know all the safety protocols involved, which felt as felt really, really good and safe. And, they just pitched the storyline, relatively later in the process. And I was like, that sounds amazing. I can't wait. And then when I got the script, I was overjoyed. And then when I learned that Robert Patrick was going to be Maze, I was ecstatic, so
yeah,
it's very, very happy to be working with him.
Do you think we would have gotten this episode without the pandemic? Like, would this have been in season 11? Because I know I think the original plan was to go to 12, and now we have a super extended season 11. So do you have any idea, or was this just created because, hey, we have some chance, we have some time to take some chances here? So
no idea.
No idea. Okay, cool.
I'd like to think that I'd like to think that it could have wound up in season 11 or 12, but I really have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah. They don't.
I'm curious.
That stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious to hear your opinion on the switch to digital, which I know is a product of the pandemic, but something I've secretly kind of wanted for a few seasons. I think the first few seasons look so great. I mean, all the seasons look great, but after a while, the film it makes night scenes a lot harder. And, when you see like the Game of Thrones of the world, it just seems like it's getting like passed up a little bit. So like seeing it in digital, I'm just like, this is so gorgeous. Like, how do you feel about it?
I mean, I'm a film fan, but I'm not a film purist. I think that there's a lot to be said about film. It's a beautiful medium, and I really do hope it continues to exist for many years to come. But what you can do with digital is, I mean, you can manipulate the data so much more than you can with film. And you can change hues. You can, like you were bringing up, like the darkness, bringing up saturation aspect with ratio, or the color scheme. You can do so much more after the fact. And also it just streamlines the process so much more, right? Like, we're able to shoot these episodes so much faster than we would if we were constantly, checking the gate and making sure that there was, nothing wrong with the actual footage. And, it just makes it so much easier. And I also think that the footage that I've been seeing on these episodes looks great. I mean, it looks really, really good. If there was a trade-off in quality, I would be bummed, but I actually think the quality is just as good, if not better.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. And I love the beginning of your episode where it's kind of the close-ups on like the bugs getting drenched in blood. Like, I was like, it's just something we couldn't really have done too well with film. So I was like, this is gorgeous. I don't know. I'm very happy about it. So that's really all that matters. So we have a few fan questions that we're just going to roll through, if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. At Enid's Galaxy, all of these ats are, by the way, amazing. If Aaron from season 10 could warn Aaron from season 5 about anything, what would he warn him about?
Negan,
yeah. Like, there's gonna be a guy in a leather jacket, and you might want to stay away.
Yeah. I mean, just stay inside the walls as long as you can. Don't go outside the walls. Yeah.
I always wonder, like, if I was like in the apocalypse and there was a Negan figure like threatening, like, I'm gonna take half your shit, I'd probably be like, all right, well, I'm gonna move because this sucks. Like, I'm like, we can fortify another neighborhood, right? There's private.
That was the thing that always cracked me up with the show. I was like, wait, so they're like outnumbering us 10-1 and they have all the guns? Why don't we just move? Like, let's just
go anywhere else.
We're good. We don't need to keep fighting.
They can't really track us. Let's just go to Ohio or something. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. You probably can't speak much on it, but at Gabby Brasiliano asks, what can we expect from Aaron in season 11? If there's any kind of tidbits.
I love Gabby. I know her quite well. I think what we can expect from Aaron is a really strong desire to rebuild the community of Alexandria and all the communities of our sphere. But really, more than anything, just to leave the future generations with safety and the chance for real success, real growth. This is the first time in the show's history that, like, all the main baddies have been defeated. And now we're thinking, we could actually like turn this into the haven that we always dreamed it would be, without the wolves, without the whispers, the saviors, all these terrible hordes of, villains that we've had to face over the years. So it seems pretty good. I mean, obviously we'll see what happens with the Commonwealth, but I think that's where Aaron's mind is at. It's just, how do we protect the future generations, and how do we make sure that they have the best chance for success.
Right. We could open a coffee bean. We can do whatever we want. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
At Glenn's GF asks, what was your reaction when you found out Aaron's arm had to be cut off?
I loved it. I mean, I thought it's, that's obviously going to be an interesting challenge. But I always love a good challenge. And I thought, just a physical manifestation of the loss he suffered over the years was really helpful for me as an actor, because, everyone has lost someone, but I think Aaron has, he's lost a lot, and
yeah.
Everybody he was friends with, almost every single Alexandrian has been killed off except for Scott, and maybe a few random townspeople, but like literally every one of his friends who he was with at the beginning of the apocalypse is dead now. I don't think any character has lost as many people as Aaron has.
That's true.
And, obviously losing Eric and Jesus, and, there's just a lot of loss there. So I thought that the beard and the arm was a great physical manifestation of, where his head is at.
Right.
And I liked that. I liked it a lot.
Physical scars. I do want to say most of the questions weren't really questions. They were just statements in all caps, like give Aaron another boyfriend that can live. So, and I don't know, it bummed me out that you and Tom's character could never really make it official. Because in the comics, spoiler, they end up together. So it's kind of like, man, but yeah. I don't know. I guess things happen. It's fine.
Robert and the showrunners never like to leave too many happy endings for any character, so I'm used to it.
One last one. At Dixon's Green wants to know, what's been your favorite scene to shoot as Aaron?
Oh, I mean, it used to be, and still is one of my favorites. The season 7 where Andy and Rick, I think it's 7-10. I used to think it was 709, but I think it's 7-10. Where they're out scavenging for Negan, and they found themselves in the houseboat where they're getting attacked by these lake walkers.
Oh yeah,
and it was so difficult to shoot from a physical perspective, but also just fun working with Andy in a closer quarters. And that probably was, up until one more, my favorite. But I think working with Seth and Robert on that Russian roulette scene, it was just, we had some real fun takes with that one, and we really went to some interesting places, and I'm really proud of that work. So I think that's probably my favorite one now.
Wow, fantastic. That's a great one. That's an amazing memory. And it was good to see you guys actually laugh and drink and stuff, because I'm like, yeah, it can't be serious all the time. People are probably hilarious and cracking jokes. Like, this is insane. Yeah. Anyway, before I let you go, you got to play a few roles in our new show, Invincible, which is super exciting. Aquarius and Immortal, which is really awesome. Sort of this parody of the Justice League. I think you guys probably recorded that a few years ago, but what was that experience like? Yeah,
I think I memory serves, I think I did one session during the pandemic. Yes, I did. Yeah, no, it was 6 months ago or so. But we've been working on that for 2 years. And I'm sure the animators have been working on it for way longer, but I love that show so much. I have watched the first 3 episodes twice already. I am really, really hoping that show takes off, because it's such a unique take on superhero, the cliches of superhero-dom, and gives it this new polish that is so interesting and so unique. And I some of my friends are like, oh, I'm not a big cartoon guy. I'm like, trust me, it's not like your typical cartoon. Watch. And some of my friends who said, I swore they would never watch it, they're loving it now, and they're hooked. Good. So I love that show, and I really hope it lasts for as long as Walking Dead does, because there's certainly enough material for that. But I thought it was fantastic from what I've seen, and I can't wait for the next episode.
So you have that. You have season 11, which is filming now, right?
Yep.
That's very exciting. So what other projects are you working on? What do you want to do after Walking Dead, which wraps later next year?
I'm doing fun stuff that I can't talk about because of
that's exciting.
NDAs. You you can't talk about anything nowadays. But I'm excited to announce that when I'm able to. But yeah, after the show, I really just want to get back to LA and do a lot of voiceover work. I loved doing stuff for Invincible, and until a show comes along like The Walking Dead that really excites me creatively, I don't just want to take the next thing. I want to do something that really is as fulfilling as this show has been. So until that time, I'm just gonna see my friends and do voiceover and wait until the next project.
Yeah. Have you gotten vaccinated yet?
No. Have you?
No, I have an appointment for next week though, so I'm very excited. They're
Nice.
just opening it up in LA, thank God. But
Cool.
hopefully you guys get it. I'm sure the protocols on set have been crazy.
They've been really tough. They've been really stringent, but for good reason. But there's talk of us getting a vaccine in a couple of weeks. So
good.
Looking forward. Yeah,
that'll make things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Well, Ross, I've met you a few times, and you've always been lovely. You're nice, and I'm really happy that you're doing well. You're feeling fulfilled, and I can't wait to see you in season 11.
Thank you very much.
Invincible. Yeah. All right, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure.
All right, that was my interview with Ross Marquand. He is a fantastic, fantastic talent. Check out his other work, his movies, shows, impressions. Next week, we'll have another fantastic guest. Like I said, not sure who it is yet, but I will figure out in the next few days. And whoever they will be, I'm sure it'll be very lovely. Until then, though, please be safe. Wear a mask if you can. Get vaccinated if you can. And as always, happy birthday to Nate.